Welcome to the Extra Salt Podcast. My name is David. This is being recorded Wednesday, May 5th, which is right after they finish DreamHack and then before they start CS Summit. So let's get into Spring Sweet Spring, and that's a hard tournament to say, by the way. Spring Sweet Spring, and then DreamHack. So they lost 0-2 in DreamHack, and they ended up not making the playoffs in Spring Sweet Spring. They started off 2-0 and then lost their last three to not make the playoffs for that. And all this said and done, I think that playing in Spring Sweet Spring was a mistake for Extra Salt. Now, I didn't think it was going to be a mistake before, but the way that the timelines all lined up made it very hard for Extra Salt to perform in the tournaments that were bigger and that mattered more. Like they played Snow Sweet Snow the morning of the finals that they lost, and then they played Snow Sweet Snow the morning of both of their DreamHack matches. So when they could have been prepping a little bit more for Big or for the DreamHack matches versus Vitality and Astralis, they were playing in Spring Sweet Spring. And so I think that it ended up being a mistake, where I think playing in more tournaments is always good. You get more experience. But in this case, I think it ended up costing them the FunSpark finals. And I also think that they potentially beat Vitality or Astralis if they're not playing in the morning already. Because in the morning, they were playing Skade to make the tournament, or to make the playoffs for Spring Sweet Spring, and they're playing Vitality to stay alive in DreamHack. So they have to prep for both those matches because they're both important. They don't want to start 2-0 and then not make the playoffs in Spring Sweet Spring, but they also need to win in DreamHack because that's where all the bigger teams are. That's where things kind of matter more. So I think that it ended up being kind of a bummer, and I think that that ended up being a mistake, and they probably would have been better off winning FunSpark and then having that time to just scrim and then coming into DreamHack ready for that. But all things said and done, their European trip seems to be over. They are still there, which is surprising. I was wondering if they were going to be able to fit one more tournament in, and that's why they were staying. But now that CS Summit is coming up pretty quickly, it doesn't seem like that's going to be possible. It seems like they might just be staying there to scrim, and because they already have the boot camp going and stuff. But they're probably going to be heading back any day here coming up. But their European trip overall, I think, was a very big success. I think their FunSpark run was incredible. I think that was better than anyone expected them to do, and that's very important. Their ranking moved up, but then they ended up not doing as well as they wanted to in DreamHack Masters, and that kind of hurts because a lot of really good teams there, and if they would have taken down Astralis, even though they don't have Device, or if they would have taken down Vitality, which they really could have, that could have been really big for them. Now, they do have ESEA coming up, which was supposed to start yesterday, I believe. If I was them, I would just skip ESEA because they have CS Summit coming up. They are already not in NA, so I don't know how that's going to work for the first couple of matches. And then it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to make playoffs because they're slated to play in IEM Summer on June 3rd. So I don't think they're going to be able to finish the season out without forfeiting a ton of games. I think the play for them is to forfeit this season and continue working the European circuit, make the major, and then that'll kind of boost them in, and hopefully their ranking will just get them in rather than having to go through Premier. So we'll kind of see if they end up playing those games or not. I don't know if they're going to back out. I know that Dust 2 Us, they did like a preview of everything and had Extra Salt in there, but I don't know if they're going to end up doing that. And I think that they'd probably be better off not doing that. Going back to the recent European trip, I think that there's a lot that they can review and get better on. I think that there was a lot for OC especially to be able to see and go through his demos and kind of see how everything was different between being arguably the best player on any team that he's played in NA, then going to Europe and seeing how they are working against him. And he even said in one of his interviews that he wasn't used to being flashed off these angles and pushed back all the time. So I think there's a lot of stuff for him to be able to review to improve and get better, because there was definitely a number of times where he was like kind of caught out in spots or ended up kind of in no man's land or didn't really have a lot of impact. So I think that he has a lot to review, and I think he's going to come back for IEM Summer or even RMR, a much better opper. So I think that Extra Salt got a lot of really good tape and a lot of really good practice, and there's no way they didn't improve with how well this trip went. Now, the big news around CS is Train being removed for Ancient, and that is so rough on Extra Salt. Train is by far their best map. When they were on Cloud9, it was their best map. They have, I think, the best T side in the world on Train. The way that they take A site is the best of any team, I think. And they predicate their entire system around just being able to dumpster that A site. And them removing that is a huge blow because not a lot of teams play it. They can punish it very heavily. They always start on the T side and usually get a huge advantage and then go to the CT side where it's normally a CT sided map. And it's also really fun to watch them play. And so moving to Ancient, I think is going to be very tough. And you can say, oh, well, they'll just get really good on Ancient. They'll bring those execs to Ancient. But the biggest difference between a map like Train and then these new maps and what looks like Ancient looks like is it looks like anyone can exec onto Ancient. What made Train unique and what made them so different is how Train has kind of two execs. It has an exec to get out onto a site because you have to get past the Opper, you have to be able to get Sandwich, you have to be able to get Hell, all those kind of things. You have to use utility just to get out there. And then once you're out there, where they really thrived was being able to take positions and then use more utility to get to the bomb train. So they would have flashes coming over smokes, and they would be able to molly people out of positions off of the train as flashes are coming in. The second execute they would perform was just unbelievable and unmatched by anyone else in the world. And when you're on these other maps, like say Inferno or Mirage or these other maps, when you're execing onto the site, you're doing an exec onto the site. There's no real like secondary exec where they can be better at. It's if a team knows the smokes and the lineups, then they know the smokes and the lineups. So I think losing Train is a very big blow for them. It'll be interesting to see how they move on. And I think every team is scrambling to become the best Ancient team right now. And we're going to be seeing a lot more overpass from Extra Salt, that's for sure. But I do think that's a huge blow. If you're an Extra Salt fan, this totally sucks, which you probably are if you're watching this. But we'll see what happens. It is good to have a map change. I was disappointed. I think that the entire community would have been totally fine with Mirage, Dust, Vertigo all going. I don't think anyone really would have complained. So it's a bummer to see that Train was the one gone and those other ones are still here. But we do have a change, so that'll be exciting to watch. It'll be exciting to see what JT and Tion come up with on Ancient and kind of see if they're able to have unique stuff or unique ways of getting around the map or different things like that. So I think it's going to be banned a lot to begin with. So the hype around it to start might not be very big, but we'll see. Some teams might be just scrimming it constantly and try to become the best at it. But the upcoming RMR, which is Extra Salt's next event, is not using Ancient. It's using Train. So this is a very good opportunity for Extra Salt to just bang out Train every single best of 3 for the entire RMR. While other teams are starting to ignore it or starting to not think about it, Extra Salt can bang that out, get really good results on this RMR, and continue on from there and then move on to Ancient. Speaking of the RMR, that is their next event coming up, and they're actually starting the closed qualifiers. So that's a double elimination tournament. The top 4 make it out, so they just have to be 4 of the top 8. There are some good teams there. It's never easy, but they should be able to make that just fine. And then the main event is 2 groups of 4 that then the top 2 make a double elimination tournament, but then the third team starts in the lower bracket, so they get like a single elimination tournament. So with the RMR, each win is very crucial because each win gets you more points towards the major. So making the main event is extremely important, and then every win that you get in the main event basically gets you more points because the farther you go, the higher tier you get and the more points you get, and that's how they rank for the major. And this first one is also very important because if they get more points, then they don't have to go through the closed qualifier, because the closed qualifier depends on how many points you have. So if they're in the top 4 of points, they should automatically be put in to the future RMR main events without having to go through the closed qualifier. So with Train still being there for this RMR, they should just be pounding it, and hopefully they can do really well. And then for the next one, when they don't have Train, they should be able to just start in the main event and have a pretty good advantage and kind of just continue on from there and make the major. Now, I think making the major is very pivotal to Extra Salt because I don't really see how the organization is making any money right now. So I think they're probably banking very heavily on the sticker money from the major. So I think that they need to make the major for the stickers. But at the same time, I also don't see why they wouldn't. I think there should be no problem. NA gets 5 slots. I think they have a good shot at. I think it would be a disappointment if they don't make the top 5. It'd be a pretty big disappointment. But I think they also have a shot at making the top 3. So I think that they should be able to do pretty well on this RMR. Just keep pounding out Train. Why not just give it one last hurrah? Play it every single match. Hopefully you can win. Hopefully you can take the RMR all the way. None of these teams are looking in top form. I think Extra Salt has a chance of taking the tournament. Now, could Liquid show up at any time? Sure. Could EG show up? Sure. Furia is always really good. Furia versus Cloud9 when they used to play in NA was always awesome to watch. So hopefully they get to play Extra Salt because that would be a really fun matchup to watch. So there are some great teams that, could have an amazing day that you just can't get over. But Extra Salt, I think, does have a great chance of winning. And I think they also have a great chance of just getting a lot of points and ending up top 4. So that's what's coming up next. Like I said, their European trip was great. I think you should all be very proud. It ended sour, but I think overall it was very good. If they don't play the Spring Sweet Spring, who knows what happens? Could have been better. But at least they got a ton of European practice, and that's what's important. So now they can go RMR, head back to IEM, do really well at IEM, and then kind of just continue on from there, getting invited to whatever tournaments or making whatever tournaments. And I think that they have the ball rolling really well right now. I think they have the world's attention, and I think they should be very proud. So that's it for this podcast. I'll catch you after the RMR.